My diversity field experience was on eating disorders, and today we'll specifically be going through misconceptions of eating disorders. When I began working on my DFE, I originally had 3 women who were willing to be interviewed about their experiences, but the more I began talking about my project and what I was presenting on, the more people agreed to be interviewed. The number went from 3 people to 5 people to 7 people, and I ended up with 9 people agreeing to be interviewed. I was able to connect with 8 of the 9 people, and that's what I'll be presenting on today. Because so many people wanted to have a conversation about their experiences with eating disorders, this shows me that this is a topic and a conversation that we should be having, yet our society seems to refuse to talk about it. A lack of understanding about what eating disorders are, as well as a general feeling of awkwardness when the conversation arises, are just 2 of the reasons our society doesn't talk about eating disorders. I ended up interviewing 8 people, 7 women and 1 male. 4 people struggled with or currently struggle with anorexia, 2 people with bulimia, and 2 people with binge eating disorder. It's so interesting to me how we label everyone under the same term of eating disorder, yet everyone's experience is so different. Even in the definition itself, which reads any of several psychological disorders, such as anorexia nervosa or bulimia, characterized by serious disturbances of eating behavior, includes examples of anorexia and bulimia, but there are also overeaters and binge eating disorders, rumination disorders, and restrictive food intake disorders. One woman I talked with who has binge eating disorder discussed how she never even thought she had an eating disorder because the only 2 ever talked about in health class were anorexia and bulimia. To me, this definition excludes the experiences of hundreds of people who aren't getting the information or the help that they need, because we as a society aren't getting the information we need in order to begin understanding the complexity of eating disorders. Every disorder is different, every person is different, and therefore every experience is different. So how did your eating disorder start? This question prompted a variety of answers. 5 people began their struggle with their eating disorder when they were in middle school or early high school, 2 people when they were in college or grad school, and 1 person after she got married at the age of 22. One woman discussed how her eating disorder began as orthorexia, which is the obsession of the type of food or the quality of food that you begin to put into your body. After a while, her diet became so restrictive because she was so concerned of what she was putting into her body. Another woman began to overeat due to her life circumstances, but it all began with a bakery that was on her way home from work, thus beginning a 13-year-long struggle with bulimia. And yet another woman's experience began after she was diagnosed with celiac disease, and she was forced to limit and restrict her diet. The more she limited her diet, the more people began to be intrigued by what she was eating. Then she began to feel more self-conscious about not only her food, but about her body image and her weight. A common misperception is that if people with eating disorders really wanted to change, that they would be able to do it. But this is so off base. Every single person I interviewed talked about how they felt like they lost control. They realized there was a line that was crossed, and they no longer felt like they could get out of their eating disorder on their own. One woman I talked to struggles with anorexia, and she's been in and out of treatment facilities for over 20 years. She said, "I wish people understood that I'm still trying to change, even if it doesn't look like it." There's a general lack of understanding about the fact that eating disorders are addictions. One woman said a close friend of hers told her she was just using her binge eating disorder as an excuse to be lazy or to not exercise. Another woman said when she confided in a close friend about her struggle with bulimia, he replied with, "Just brush your teeth after you eat. Won't that work?" Many of the people I interviewed also discussed how their eating disorders were more than just about eating disturbances. For example, exercise was a very common factor that I came across. One woman played 3 collegiate sports, as well as exercised outside of practice. And another woman's family stopped letting her go to the gym because they knew she had become obsessed with exercise. No fuel plus excessive exercise equals burnout. And yet some individuals went so far as to say their eating disorders wasn't ever really about the food. One woman phrased it perfectly. Eating disorders are not just about food. That's a symptom of a deeper issue. Over half of the people I interviewed recognized their eating disorder wasn't entirely about the food. Trauma, societal pressures, bullying, depression, and a need for control were just some of the factors that I heard. Ultimately, eating disorders are addictions. Recovery is another varying aspect of many people's experiences with eating disorder. Hollywood has made movies and shows about eating disorders like My 600-Pound Life and To the Bone, but many of these shows either glorify or ridicule both the addiction and recovery process. One woman spoke of her recovery experience as bungee jumping with frayed ropes over a sea of famished crocodiles. Another woman stated, "In my opinion, success is rarely ever linear. The only thing that matters is you continue to try." Everyone's experience is different in treatment or recovery. Some people spend months in recovery or even years, and others never even went to treatment at all. One woman was in a study at the U of M on bulimia, where she was put in the experimental group that received both counseling and medication. She spoke of this experience as a miracle because she thought she would never be able to get out of her eating disorder on her own. So what does this mean for us as future educators? Over half of the people I interviewed began their struggle with eating disorders in middle school and high school. Many of them discussed trauma at home and bullying in the classroom, as well as body dysmorphia. Access to social media and a general lack of body positivity doesn't help anyone, especially middle and high schoolers, as well as those struggling with an eating disorder. Being involved in our students' lives, maintaining a positive and encouraging classroom, and being inclusive and open to conversations can help some of our students feel supported enough to open up about their experiences. Food is everywhere. Instagram celebrities are easily accessible, and bullying is rampant in schools today. We can't support our students or our peers who struggle with eating disorders when we aren't open to having the conversation. The first step in solving a problem is recognizing that there is one.